if I want to describe this place, I say, okay, the lighting was good, there are nice curtains out there, the seating arrangement is good. Now the computer doesn't understand all this, right? Now when I say it was very good, now how do you understand this? What is very good to me may be very bad to somebody else, right? You may say, okay, oh, this you feel that this lighting is good, I don't like it, because it depends on the person's interest. So what we do in descriptive statistics is that what we tell our machines to do is we rate it. Okay, how do you rate the lighting on a scale of 1 to 5? If you say 5, it's good. Now you put 5, somebody puts 5, everybody will be able to understand what is the meaning of 5. When I say good, it's a qualitative characteristics which computers will not understand. So in descriptive statistics, what we do is we reduce everything basically to numbers. Then we talk about the mean. Now what is the mean? What is the mean age of people sitting here? So now this mean, what I gives the average value, and there is a very important and very negative impact of the mean. So suppose I have, now let's take here, the average of age of people sitting there is say 20, 25 or 25. Say I am 50. What happens is your 25 combined with my 50 raises the mean of the class, which is wrong, correct? Because there is only one person in this class who is 50, all others are 50, but the mean raises it. So what happens when you are having the error rate? If you are talking about the mean error rate, many times it gives a wrong impression. So therein we go for other measures like median or mode, how many times a particular computer or the particular software or the programmer has made error in understanding the data. So that would be a better measure. Now once we talk about mean, we describe the data using those four: recall, precision, error rate and accuracy rate, and generally it is in percentages for easy understanding. When we talk about estimation, now could you tell me what is the meaning of estimation? What is your understanding of estimation? Approximation. Any other? Okay, what are the conditions? Now estimation is opposed to enumeration. How many people are there in this room now? If I want to correctly find out, I start counting. I am enumerating. Okay, I just estimate. Okay, there may be about 20. Right? That is the estimate. Not wrong. Depends on whether I am good in estimation. A person who has worked with computers, machines, software will be able to clearly understand what is wrong in the answers. You know, when the results come out, when output come out, if you are a seasoned person, you will be able to clearly know that there is something wrong in the report. The data is supporting. Something is wrong in the understanding or something is wrong in the answer. Now, why do we use estimation? It's a very important question. Estimation is used when the population is large. When I have a huge population, now in my corpus I have 10 lakh words, huge population. I cannot simply enumerate. Though the original bag of words would have enumeration in it, now I can only estimate because words have got added on. If you see the English dictionary in the past, say maybe 2-3 years, number of words would have got added on. So the total number of words we have in the dictionary, you can only estimate because more are in the process of being added. Now, when we want to, that is one thing, when the population is very large. Second, when we don't have much time, we don't have time to sit and think, okay, whether this word, suppose it's an Indian word, say Raja or Curry, probably means nothing in Chinese or Spanish. So when you have this word in the corpus, there is a zero probability of it occurring in a Chinese language. Or there is some word in China or Greek, which is zero probability of we using it in our day-to-day life. Right? We don't use that words. So that kind of words, if we remove, then we will have a fairly accurate idea about how many words we have in the corpus. That is what is the division, the denominator going to be. Now, when we don't have that, we can only go for estimation. So, in those when we are not using, it's just an estimate. So, the word estimate should not have a negative connotation. It only means it's a substitute for enumeration when you have shortage of resources. And then I have a small sample. I have big data here. And then I take a small representative portion which is called the sample. Now if you go to the World Bank website and if you try to download some files, there is a huge database. That's a big data. To evaluate, to find the patterns in it, it becomes very difficult. Take an online portal. Now the number of people who enter the website and who check the website, You can get a count by finding the number of hits. Number of people who actually order may be much less, right? So here there is a difference between the expectation, what I told in the first slide, and the actual reality. Now the same thing comes to statistical estimation. Now in this group, now I can easily divide the group into girls and boys. Now I take one girl as a representative for the entire girls group. I take one boy as a representative of the entire girls group, and I make the experiment. Is it a valid experiment? One girl out of the entire girls group, one boy out of the entire girls group, and I do my experimentation. What do you feel? Not right? Not right. Why not? Girl is representing the girls group, boy is representing the boys group. The reason is, we will not be able to find that one girl who will completely represent the girls group, right? So we cannot find a particular word, or we cannot find a particular syntax which will completely represent what I want, what I am trying to say. I am feeling wonderful today. Wonderful is a word, but can it really measure my wonderfulness? Right? So that's a subjective thing. I can also tell it in a wrong way. I am feeling wonderful today, something like that. So there the concept of generalization comes. How many people who use the word wonderful actually mean wonderful? And are they all at the same level of wonderful state? If I define that wonderful state as 100, how many of them who say I am wonderful are in 100? How many of them are in 90? Can I categorize? So there comes the concept of estimation. Now when I do estimation, the simplest way to explain it is, I take a sample, I have to study this whole room, I take only the first bench, I study them and I generalize it. That's the way we do it, but it is supported by some statistical evidence. I cannot just like that say, okay, I have taken 10 out of 25, this is my answer, please accept it. It has to be backed by some statistical knowledge. So we have the accuracy, we see that a particular system S obtains an accuracy of R. How much confidence should we place? Very important, because this determines the validity or the confidence what people have in me as a programmer, as a statistician, as a person. So this confidence is given by the one concept in statistics called the statistical estimation and confidence interval. A simple example. In Bangalore, this is just a theoretical example, I really don't know the correct figures. There are 25,000 programs. Okay, not in Bangalore, probably in a company. Okay, 25,000 programs. I take a sample of 250. Here I have to choose them in such a way that they represent these 25,000. And I find that their mean age is 25.6 years. Now, this is the mean age for 250 people. What is the mean age of these 25,000 people? Now, an insurance company wants to insure these people. So, it wants to know what is how should I go about that insurance team. So, it wants to know the mean age, because it then can calculate the premium. It can also calculate the premium based on the job stress, etc., etc. So, what it does is, it generalizes this to these 25,000. So, now this is 25.6 years. This is accurate value. Here I don't have an accurate value, but through statistics I am getting a value which says something like this. The mean age of 25,000 people I don't know, but it will be somewhere between 22 and 27 point. So this is called estimation. This is called confidence limits. This is called a point estimation. How much marks are you going to get in the exam? 95. Correct. Exam has happened, I don't know, my teacher may be very strict. So I'll say I don't know, I may get between 95 and 100. So that is the interval wherein you are giving yourself and the other person a little more rope. Leading. Now look at this, hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing is a very important thing. Now I am approaching you people, I am standing here. My hypothesis is all of them will understand. I come with that hope. Otherwise, there is no meaning in me coming here. Why are you all sitting here? You are hoping that you will all understand what I am talking. So, the basic hypothesis, presumption under which we work is, the other person is good, my system will work, I will be able to solve this problem, I will be able to go through the life today, something like that. So, we have a statistical hypothesis in which we write it in a mathematical form, and then we try to find out whether that is right or wrong. So I have two systems which have an error rate of R1, R2. Error rate I explained in the previous slide. R1 is less than R2. Now, very important, statistically significant, very crucial to your understanding of NLP also. Now you are using a particular software. I was just talking to sir and he was telling me that you try to program it, basically you're trying to model a system through some algorithm and then you're trying to find out whether it is a true representation. Okay, now suppose I get the answer as a big error rate, I get a huge error rate. Is it statistically significant? Means what? This error rate could have happened because of many reasons. It could have happened because of wrong writing down of the data, wrong input, wrong calculation, problem with the machine, problem with the understanding of the output. It could have happened due to many things, due to chance. Then it is not statistically significant. When you repeat the experiment many number of times and you find out there is some underlying cause, then it becomes statistically significant. That is also called the bootstrapping, which I mentioned in the first few slides. So if I get an error today, I cannot say that the machine or the algorithm is wrong. I do it, I redo it, I check for the confidence intervals, then I say whether there is some statistical significance. And then definitely whenever we use the word statistical significance, there is some underlying cause which has to be removed. Suppose there is a bus driver who comes late. Every Friday he comes late. So my immediate reaction is, okay, you're coming late, you're a bad driver. Now, if I dig deeper into the thing, I may find that on Fridays generally the temples are crowded. Probably the route passes through a particular area where there are a lot of temples, so he is not able to navigate faster. So that's why he is coming late on every Friday. So here it is not statistically significant because there is some reason behind that late coming which can be removed. Right? So like that only, when we have an error rate or an accuracy which is low, we can find out whether there is a statistical significance or not. These are some of the tests, PAY-T test, Wilcoxon rank test and McNemar's test, which will help you to understand whether there is statistical significance or not. We'll talk about a few case studies before I end up the talk. This was a wonderful case study I found. In fact, what they have done is, they have taken suicide notes written by people who have committed suicide, who are no longer there, people who have failed in their attempt to commit suicide, and people who are planning to commit suicide but didn't commit suicide. They also took volunteers. They said, okay, suppose you want to commit suicide, what sort of note will you write? So they made them write notes. Okay, before committing suicide, I'm going to write this. So those notes were compared and categorized it. They wanted to check whether the machine will be able to understand, categorize these suicide notes as well as a trained physician. So if I'm going to approach a psychiatrist, the minute I talk, the way I stand, the way I move my eyes and hands, he'll be immediately able to tell whether I'm a normal or an abnormal person. But other people may not really know. So these wanted to test whether reading these suicide notes will give a clue whether the person is in a suicidal mode or not, whether the tendency is there or not. And they used a lot of Bayesian estimations and other calculations to process it and to classify people according to their roles. Used in every document. So if I'm using a statistic, I've given them to write something on statistics, they're going to use statistics, they're going to use classification, probability. We cannot call that as plagiarism, right? So now we can use this to analyze strings and the structure of the text. Again, by using naive Bayesian classifications, it will match the string of words and then try to find out whether it's a plagiarized version or it's the original one. This is text analytics. Text analytics is always difficult because, as I said, data, it's easier to work with data. It's understandable, everybody has a clear idea, but text analytics is very difficult. So when I have an essay, when I have a yes or no kind of thing, I can easily ask my students to do it on a computer and then give marks. But when I'm asking them to write an essay, it's a big botheration. because whether the students have done it right, whether the correct words have been used, whether it has been copy pasted, we don't know. So this is one very wonderful article which you could go through, which they have used for text analysis. Was done in 2011. As I said, bad news travels fast. So you post something negative on Twitter and it will be retweeted, and the number of times it is retweeted gives an idea whether it's an interesting tweet or not. So this could, what are the features which would make the tweet being retweeted, or to get more likes on Facebook, what kind of messages should you put? What kind of messages should you be putting? What are the words which, when input, will make people like your messages? So this is some kind of sentiment analysis again. What kind of messages are going to be retweeted? In terms of Facebook, it classifies as how many, what kind of words will make people like your feeds, statuses like you. So this is all about statistics and machine learning. As I said, there's a vast amount of things to be done here. In fact, I have omitted one full concept of operations research, wherein we talk about simulation methods. We simulate data. Simulation of data gives us a big corpus. So our probability of getting the right word or hitting the right note is much faster. So this is just to introduce you to the concept of applied statistics in the field of natural languages. Thank you so much. Simply, regional language is a very difficult thing, because as I said, see, the rules which apply in English, like for example, when I say anic, so the vowels have to be followed by an, right, and the consonants by a. But in the regional language, they have a different rule altogether. So what happens is, there, if you are trying to directly translate, what could happen is a transliteration. But translation will not happen like that. For translation, again, we have to check each word. For example, I say good. In Kannada, it means chanagide. Now, this good and Kannada chanagide, how much they match, Good could be used in a variety of ways, and chanagide again can be used in a different way. So regional languages are always a pain in the neck, always. Even I think if you are using some regional language software, English typing is so much faster. Whereas a regional language is struggling to find a particular r matra or the au matra which goes into it, which doesn't happen. So English too, especially this Chinese and those kind of things, what I've read, I don't know Chinese, but I've read that it is really very difficult to translate, because their rules are totally different from us. Probably, English UK and English US is, understandable. Or even Indian English is understandable, because the basic rules are the same.
So, do I need to hire a linguist?
Definitely a person who knows the rules of the language, definitely. Okay. See, what happens, one more important thing is, when you're doing translation, most of the time the essence is lost. If you see any of the translated versions, the original what you read and the original, very good translators only, I'm not talking about computers, human beings, very good translators only are able to keep the same essence. Otherwise, definitely it will be lost. In any of the regional language newspapers and magazines, if you read, the translated version will not have the same flavor, because it's highly impossible. Because the reverse is more difficult, because in regional language we have certain words which have no English equivalents. So that also makes a difference. But yes, either you have to be a linguist yourself, or definitely use the services of a linguist. Definitely.
Thanks.
Do you think that as regional language,
One second.
it's okay. It's a bit loud.
Oh yeah, I think.
Yeah, no problem.
So translating regional language is very difficult. But do you think that if we try to translate word by word a regional language into English, for example, it will be more easier using statistics to understand the sentiment of
Yes. See, what happens is, when you're translating word by word, we are talking about its independence of the previous word. So each word is taken on its own merit. It's not clubbed. Like as I said, when I say an egg, if I write a egg in English, it's wrong. But when I'm talking about a regional language, probably it is possible to write a egg in the regional language. So there these rules do not apply. So what we do is, this is exactly what you're saying is the problem of naive-based classifying. Every word we split. Each word. Now I love good food. I love good food. All of them are taken as different words, totally independent of the previous one, and transliterated. Then when you try to get the overall view, you'll get the translation part of it. Because when you transliterate, what happens? The word occurs as it is. No? But that is not really what you mean. I will only go. Many of our students say, I finished itself. Yesterday itself I finished. That's not really correct in English. That's a transliteration. But with that, we can get the essence of translation. Definitely. Yes. Tell me.
And is there any database of is there any database on internet which lists, for example, a word and its probability of being positive, negative, or neutral?
Probability of?
Being positive, negative, or neutral. Is there any big database on internet which is done or open source?
No, see, what happens is this false positive and false negative is always a drawback. It's always, some threat looming large. Because as I said, when something is positive and you're interpreting it as negative, the whole paragraph goes into that mode. So because of one wrong interpretation,